Shavua Tov. I hope everyone is doing well and healthy. Be'ezrat Hashem. We're continuing from where we left off last week. Last week, we finished perek Hey. We finished the 5th chapter, and basically we saw a contrast between two people. The contrast between Hazvi and Naaman. We mentioned that Naaman was an enemy to Am Yisrael. He was one of the generals of Melech Aram. He was an enemy, mamash, an enemy of Am Yisrael. But he was sent to Elisha to be cured, and because they heard Elisha is a miracle worker, and he ends up as an enemy to Am Yisrael. He ends up coming to Eretz Yisrael, coming to Elisha, and leaving as a ma'amin. Not a ma'amin ben ma'amin. He was a ger. He was the first ma'amin of his family. And we saw a couple of girsaot in the Gemara, and we saw a couple of girsaot based on some of the Rishonim and the Acharonim that claimed that there's a ta'ut sofer, that there is a mistake in the Gemara. We all know that Haman was an Amalekian and he was a Rasha. And therefore, when the Gemara says that Amalek's sons were teaching his not sons, but the sons of his sons, his descendants, were teaching Torah in Bnei Brak, we all raise the brow. And the Gemara tries to solve it. We saw a couple of solutions. The Gemara tries to say that they converted because the Dayanim didn't know who they were. Others say that it's okay for an Amalekian to be converted. There's a machloket. But either way, we saw that the Gemara says that the descendants of Haman HaRasha were teaching Torah in Bnei Brak. But the girsa that I read that I thought was so fitting was that the ta'ut sofer was not Haman, but rather Naaman. If you write Haman, you write Naaman, I can understand why maybe there's a mistake. They sound the same. They have a nun sofit at the end. So really, the girsa is that Naaman's descendants were teaching Torah in Bnei Brak. And why Naaman? Because we saw that Naaman was a true believer. He didn't join Am Yisrael, and that was because he was the general of Aram. He didn't convert like Ruth HaMoaviyah converted to Judaism. We saw the comparison between Ruth and Naaman. But he did believe in a Kadosh Baruch Hu, so much so that he proclaimed, he said out loud to everyone who heard him that there's only one God in the world, and that is the God of Israel. So he goes back to Aram as a believer. So therefore, the merit, the sachar that he gets was that his descendants, mamash, his descendants taught Torah, meaning his descendants, I guess, converted to Judaism. So he was the first in his family to discover God, one God, the first one, and his descendants converted to Judaism, versus Ruth, which we discussed at length last week. In contrast to Naaman, we met Hazvi. Hazvi was a faithful servant to Elisha, Hanavi. And we saw him a couple of times really doing his job properly. He was a servant of Elisha, the prophet. So obviously he believed in Hashem. But the difference between him and Naaman is so clear. Naaman overcame his struggles. Naaman overcame his disbelief and showed his belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Gehazi, who comes from within, Gehazi, who supposedly was a believer as a servant to Elisha, hid behind Kedusha. Because in truth, we saw what he did. He plots a story in order to gain materialism, to gain money, after his master Elisha told him not to. And he hides behind this persona of justice, this persona of perfection, this persona of a good person, when really he was taking things for himself. very clear contrast between Gehazi and Naaman. And we saw at the end of the perek that the tzara'at, the leprosy, that Naaman had was now delivered and given over to Gehazi and his descendants ad olam. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu does not like those types of people. Echad bapeh ve'echad balev. Somebody who makes believe he's something, but in reality he's something very, very different. That was Gehazi. Naaman, what you see is what you get. And when he was proven the koach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he immediately says out loud, Hashem hu Elokim. Very similar to what we do, Motzei Yom HaKippurim. So that's what we saw last perek. We saw how Elisha Hanavi, very different than Eliyahu, was dealing with human beings. He wasn't dealing with Am Yisrael as a cloud, as a general. He wasn't dealing with the problems Am Yisrael was having. He was dealing with specific private people. He was dealing with Gehazi, with Naaman on the one hand, Mekarev him, and by that showing the world who Hashem is, but also reprimanding and taking care of those inside of Am Yisrael who are turning a blind eye to real justice and using for themselves. Mamash kacha. Perek Vav, which we're going to start now, brings two more miracles. One very short one, and one very, very interesting. That many people don't remember that this is part of Elisha's life, and I think that this is going to teach us another element and show us another way of looking at Elisha Hanavi that we didn't see up until now. So let's jump right in. Perek Vav, chapter 6, Pasuk Aleph. Okay. Vayomru b'nei hanevi'im. Elisha, we know that he runs with the pack of Nevi'im, b'nei hanevi'im. It's his own personal Beit Midrash. Every Rav has students in order to teach them, to mold them, so that they can continue his way. We know that Eliyahu did it with Elisha, and now Elisha has his own pack of Bnei Nevi'im that we've met a couple of times before. So these Bnei Nevi'im turn to Elisha, and what do they say? Hamakom asher anachnu yoshvim sham lefanecha tsar mimenu. Right? We're living in an area where, Baruch Hashem, we're having more kids, our families are growing, and we need another place. It's too small to live. We only have 2 bedrooms, we need a 3-bedroom. We only have 3 bedrooms, we need 4. We have 5, 6, 7 kids, and it's too small for us. We need another community. We need to expand. So we need to grow somewhere else. And they have an idea. Where are they going to go? Pasuk bet. Ne'elechana ad hayarden, v'nikcha misham ish kora echat, v'na'aseh lanu sham makom lashevet sham. So they have an idea. Look, where's the best place for us to go and start a community? Let's go to the Yarden. The Yarden is a place where many, many miracles were performed, including a miracle by twice Elisha Hanavi, Eliyahu before that, Yehoshua bin Nun. We just read about Yehoshua in the Haftarah of Parashat Shlach Lecha, and Yarden is a great place for Bnei Nevi'im to be. It's a holy place. It's an amazing place. Now, we're talking about people from Mamlechet Yisrael. Had they been in Mamlechet Yehuda, I could assume they would probably go somewhere around Yerushalayim. But they're part of the tribes of Mamlechet Yisrael. So they're looking for a place to expand, and they say, let's go to the Yarden. So Elisha says, great, good idea. Let's create a Garin Torani in Lud. No, Garin Torani in the Yarden. So he says, great idea. Lechu. Pasuk Gimel. Vayomer ha'echad ho'el na velech et avadecha. We would really love if you came with us. We don't want to leave you. Just because we need to expand, we need an area for our kids to play, to live. We are going to be building houses. We're going to be taking a hammer and wood. And we're going to really build our homes from zero. And we would love if you would join us. You are our master, and we would we also need you. You're with us. We can get help. Vayomer ani elech. So Elisha says that is a wonderful idea. Sachakol, my job is to help those in need, and you're my people. I will come and help you as well. Vayomer ani elech. I will go. It's a wonderful idea. Vayelech itam. He goes with them. Vayavo hayardena vayigzeru ha'etzim. So he goes with them, and he starts helping them cut down trees, and they're really building up this new Gar'in Torani, this new area, this new community. Now, another idea that came across my mind was, we're talking about B'nai Nevi'im. We're talking about people who want to do good in this world. We're talking about people that believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the midst of people who don't, in the midst of people who aren't so connected to Hashem. We saw that in so many ways. So maybe they're saying, look, in order for us to really help Am Yisrael, first we need to create something tight, something really strong, a community just of Torah, a community of avodah, a community of Torah mitzvot. And once we do that, we'll have more koach, we'll establish schools, and maybe our community will get bigger, will affect people and influence people, right? And of course, they want Elisha to come with them. So maybe this is the beginning of a desire, since Elisha HaNavi is not doing this, because he has a nevuah to take care of, the nevuah that he received from his teacher, Eliyahu, saying that this generation is doomed. There's nothing you can do about them. They will die. That was the punishment. But the Bnei HaNevi'im are good people who will believe in maybe possibly making change. And the change they're trying to do is first, like one of the Hasidic rabbis used to always say when one of the Talmidim came to the Rebbe and said, Rebbe, I would like to change the world. And he goes out there and he starts preaching and he starts teaching everybody, and he's not succeeding. Nobody is listening to him. Nobody cares about this just guy who's going out there and saying, look, we got to do better. No one hears him. He's out in the shuk somewhere. Nobody cares. So the Rebbe says, okay, maybe start with your community. He goes to his community and he's yelling out and change your ways, and no one listens to him. And then the Rebbe says, okay, try in your own family. And he goes to his family, stands up and convenes a family meeting, and he's telling them we should change, and they're maybe. And then he goes to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, well, first change yourself. Heal yourself first. And then once you do that, you can influence your family. And once you influence your family, that family can influence another family. And then soon enough, you'll have a community of great people. And that community can influence, the city. And the city can influence the entire country. So maybe that's really what the Bnei Nevi'im are trying to do. So Elisha realizes, look, I can't. But the Bnei Nevi'im might be able to. So he goes along with them. Vayomer ani elech, I will go with you. Pasuk Daled, vayelech itam vayavo hayardena vayigzeru ha'etzim. So they start cutting down trees and they start, building houses. All of a sudden, Pasuk Hey, vayehi ha'echad mapil ha'kora ve'et ha'barzel nafal el ha'mayim. Vayitzak vayomer aha adoni vehu Shaul. So one of them is in the middle of cutting down a tree, and suddenly his iron axe, right? I guess the iron disconnects from the wood, right? And it fell into the water. The metal part, the axe that cuts down trees, falls into the water. And this Ben Navi says, oh my God, what am I going to do? What shall I do? He's saying this out loud. He's screaming, what do I do? This is not even my axe. I borrowed this axe from someone. What do I do? Oh my goodness. Which teaches us a little bit about this Ben Navi. We've been talking about these Bnei Nevi'im for a while now, but we never really tuned into what kind of people are these Bnei Nevi'im. Are they just Bnei Nevi'im, meaning they're just trying to get nevuahs all day? Are they just these people who are trying to do mantras all day long, trying to receive some kind of nevuah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or are they just regular ordinary people who are trying to live a just life? So from this, I'm pinpointing here, but from this pasuk we can realize that what do they care about? What does this Ben Navi care about? He just lost his axe. His iron bar goes into the Nachal of the Yarden. And what happens when iron goes into water? It sinks all the way down. Now, those of you who have ever been into the Nachal HaYarden will know that it's not clear water, right? It's the middle. There are weeds, and you can't jump in and just pick it up. You can't even find it. You won't find it. There's swamps. You can drown there. So what does he care about? He doesn't care about the fact that now he can't work and build a house. Now he doesn't care about that. Now he's going to be slowing down the work. He cares about one thing. I borrowed this axe. It doesn't belong to me. How am I going to repay the owner? There is a pasuk in Shmot Kaf Bet that teaches us the laws of a person who borrows something. A borrower always needs to pay for his wrongdoings. It doesn't matter how. A borrower, someone who borrows a shoel, always must pay. And this person is worried either because he doesn't have what to pay back with, because he doesn't have money. So one way to say is during this time, and I investigated, during this time, iron was very, very expensive. So the pasuk goes out of its way to say these Bnei Anevim were very poor. They didn't even own their own tools to build houses. They had to go borrow tools from others. And now that he lost it, and he can't retrieve it, he doesn't know what to do. How am I going to repay? This Ben Navi, like all the other Bnei HaNevi'im, were not just these people trying to prophesize. They were good people trying to live just lives. Out of everybody in Israel, out of everyone who was worshiping other gods, these people not only worshiped Hashem, they were good Jews, following Torah mitzvot, following a halacha of shoel, of a borrower. They don't know what to do. What do I do? I want to repay the guy, but I have no money. What do I do? V'hu Shaul. That's what he says. It's borrowed axe. So thank God Elisha Hanavi is there. We know who Elisha is. Elisha is a miracle worker. That's we've seen that in so many different stories. A rebirth and saving a child and creating unlimited oils, right? So of course he can save the day, but he's not being asked because the Ben Navi is scared for himself, but rather he knows he needs to repay the person that it's his ask. So what does he say? Vayomer, pasuk vav, vayomer ish ha'elohim, ana nafal. Elisha says, where did the axe, the iron part of the axe, the blade, where did it fall? Right? He asks the man. Vayar'eu et hamakom. So this Ben Navi shows Elisha exactly where it cut off the stick and where it fell around. So what does Elisha do? Vayiktov etz. Elisha cuts off a stick. Vayashlech shama vayatzef habarzal. He takes a stick, throws it into the water, and what happens? The axe, the metal part of the axe, the blade, rises and floats. And once it floats, the Ben Navi can go ahead and retrieve it and pick it up. There it is. Nice miracle. Vayomer, and Elisha says to him, Harem lach, take out the blade, connect it back to your piece of wood, and you can continue working as if nothing happened. Vayishlach yado vayikacheu. And so he reaches down and he picks it up, and I assume he went back to work. What a story. What a story. It's seemingly unimportant story. Really, it's an unimportant story, not the history of Am Yisrael. It's not an important story for Mamlechet Yisrael. It's not an important story at all. It's not an important story at all. So what does this story come to teach us? One thing, it's something we've been delving with the entire time of Elisha. Elisha is helping individuals. He sees one person, b'metzuka. He sees one person who's having a hard time with mishpat and tzedek. He sees somebody who's in agony. He doesn't have money to repay the one he borrowed the axe from. And he's saying to himself, what am I going to do? How am I going to give it back? I don't know what to do. Iron costs a lot. And the only reason I borrowed it is because I'm trying to make a difference in this world. I want to create a community that will help Am Yisrael, Mamlechet Yisrael, Elisha, you can't do it. And we understand you have a nevuah to fulfill, but we are not bonded to your nevuah. We can try, we can do our shlichut, we can create a garin torani, we can create something that might make a difference. And they tried by building a new community. Is it his fault that it fell? He's just working. He's not a mikzoan, he's not a mumche, he's not a house builder. But Elisha sees the agony, so he creates a miracle and allows the blade, which is heavier than, that's supposed to sink, float, and he saves this person from needing to repay and pay back the cost of the axe, which he doesn't have. That's a pretty cool story. It's a story that is meant just to show how Elisha cares about the individual, how he cares about someone who's just going through a hard time, not at his own fault, but not just as someone who cares about justice. In contrast, back to Gehazi, who uses Judaism, who hides behind his tzedek, his righteousness, to really do evil. Here, this guy is trying to do good. So we see another small story, really trying to just show us a little bit about what Elisha, who Elisha is, and by way, teaching us that these Bnei Nevi'im were good Jews, really trying to make a difference and following Torah mitzvah. Pasuk Chet, the next story is a little bit longer, but very, very interesting in my eyes. Again, it will show a little bit how Elisha really does care about the individual, but it also shows something else, something new that we didn't meet yet with Elisha. And it will also show us a little bit about what Mamlechet Yisrael, what the kings are going through at this time as well. So let's just jump right in. Pasuk Chet. Umelech Aram haya nilcham beYisrael, vayiva'atz el avadav lemor el mekom ploni almoni tachanoti. So the king of Syria, Aram, Syria is where Aram is, the Aram where Ben-Hadad was. Again, we don't really know which king we're talking about. We assume it's Ben-Hadad, but it's immaterial. It doesn't really matter because the message here is more important. So what does he say? The king of Syria was at war with Am Yisrael. It's a constant war, meaning small little battles. We saw that the entire time through Elisha's reign as a Navi. So this king of Aram consults with his officers, right? Vayiva'atz el avadav. Avadav means his officers. And they want to choose a place to set up camp so they might be able to have a small battle and get another small win over Mamlechet Yisrael. Vayishlach ish ha'elohim el melech Yisrael lemor, hishamer me'avor hamakom hazeh, ki sham arav nechitim. Elisha sends word to the king of Israel. Again, we don't know who he is. We know that it's not Hazael because he wasn't anointed yet. So what does Elisha tell the king of Israel? Warning him not to go near that place because he says the Aramim are waiting to ambush you. They are trying to nitpick. We say in Hebrew, milchemet hatasha, similar to what we're going through for the past 60, 70 years with these Arabs in Gaza and Jenin and all these other places. Constant trying to create battles, small wins over Am Yisrael. That's really what's going on with Aram. They couldn't succeed in war in general because God was always with Am Yisrael, with Achav, if you remember. So they're going to try small little things, a rocket here, a rocket there, a little battle here. Small wins at the end of the day can make great strides towards a bigger win. So the Melech of Aram, decides to set camp to ambush Am Yisrael. Maybe they even created some type of tunnel, to come up somewhere. But that didn't help the Melech of Aram because Elisha has nevuah. And Elisha, I guess, understood. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him a nevuah, and he understood what was going, and immediately turns to the king of Israel. He says, King of Israel, beware of so-and-so, of this place and that place, because if you go near that area, there will be battle with the Aramean, with the Aramah, with Syrians. So what happens? Pasuk Yud. וישלח מלך ישראל אל המקום אשר אמר לו איש האלוהים, והזהירו ונשמר שם. So the king of Israel warns the people who lived in that area or that place so that they don't get hurt, and they were on guard. Lo achat v'lo shtayim. And this happened a couple of times. Lo achat v'lo shtayim means that the king of Aram tried a couple of times. He saw that somehow the area that he was going to ambush, the people found out, so he went somewhere else. What happened? Elisha knew about it too when he told the king of Israel, beware of that area because another ambush is coming. So the king of Israel warned those people. And the king of Aram did it another time, tried somewhere else. Every single time he would try to ambush Am Yisrael, Mamlechet Yisrael, he didn't succeed. Because Elisha was blocking all of his attempts to conquer and to create battle against Am Yisrael, Mamlechet Yisrael. So, of course, Melech Aram doesn't know what to do. Pasuk Yud Aleph, Vayisaer lev Melech Aram al hadavar hazeh. Right? The king of the Syrian king becomes really upset. Mamash. Vayisaer lev Melech Aram. His heart's like, what is going on here? How is this happening? I'm really upset over this. So what does he do? The middle of Pasuk Yud Aleph, Vayikra elav hadav, yomer alihem, halo tagidu li, mi mishelanu el melech Yisrael. He's so upset, he calls his officers and saying, look, we must have a traitor in our midst. Which one of you is on the side of the king of Israel? Who is leaking information? Who is telling that king of Israel where we're camping, where we're creating an ambush? Somebody is a traitor here, and I'm not letting anybody leave until I find the traitor. He will be hung. He doesn't understand. How is it possible that every single time he does it quietly? An ambush, by definition, is quiet. But every single time he sets up an ambush, he sets up a little camp, Mamlechet Yisrael knows about it. And the king warns the people, and he didn't succeed. Pasuk Yud Bet. Vayomer echad me'avadav. Lo Adoni HaMelech. One of the soldiers, the officer says, Your Majesty, you got it all wrong. You really got it wrong. None of us are traitors. We are all on your side. Ki Elisha Hanavi, asher beYisrael yagid lamelech Yisrael et hadvarim asher tadaber bachadar mishkavecha. They say, look, Israel, they have a prophet. They have a miracle worker. His name is Elisha. And he's telling the king of Israel constantly what you're saying. And even in the privacy of your own room, he can hear you. He's a Navi, he's a prophet. He knows exactly what you're doing at all times. Pretty amazing. Basically, Elisha has eyes and ears everywhere. Wouldn't you wish we had that also during the last war we had with Gaza? And if we could just know exactly where they're firing their rockets from, wouldn't be that amazing? I mean, that was our biggest problem this past war. Our biggest problem was that we had Iron Dome, and that and we were bombing them out. But our biggest problem was we didn't know where they're shooting their rockets from. We did not know where they're setting up their camps, their little small camps that they're firing their rockets from. Well, that's exactly what happened here with Melech Aram. Same thing. Every time you would set up a launcher to shoot a rocket, Elisha would pinpoint the exact place where the rocket's being shot from. Pretty amazing. And every single time, he would stop him from launching that rocket. Because Elisha knows exactly where everything is. And that's what the officer is saying to him. It's not us. We're not traitors. They just have somebody so powerful. You know, a satellite that has ears in your own bedroom. Pretty amazing. So what is going to be the response now of Melech Aram? Melech Aram answers, all right, I get it, I hear you. Vayomer, lechu, uru, eichohu, ve'ishlach, ve'ekachehu. So the king of Aram says, I hear you. So basically what you're telling me is the only way to defeat Israel is to get Elisha. We need to get Elisha. Find out where he is, the king orders, and I will capture him. ויוגד לו לאמור, הנה בדותן. They say, we know where he is. Elisha is in Dotan. Metsuyan. Okay. So he's in Dotan. Now I know where he is, the king of Aram says. Now we can go and capture him. Pasuk Yudalit. He sent a large force there with horses and chariots. Vaishlach shama susim verechev vechayil kaved. To capture one man, Elisha. He sends everything he has. Susim, verechev, vechayil kaved. Vayavohu laila. Stealth mode. He goes up, creeps up on Elisha's home with so many people. Vayakifu al ha'ir, and they surround the whole city where Elisha resides. Right? Horses, chariots. Pasuk Tetvav. This was at night. Pasuk Tetvav, Vayashkem mesharet ish ha'elohim lakum. So, one of Elisha's servants wakes up in the morning. It's not Gehazi, because we got rid of Gehazi, if you remember. Somebody new. Vayetze, and he, I guess, was waking up early, maybe to get water for Netilat Yadayim for Elisha, maybe to go out and get water for drinking. So he goes out of Elisha's home to whatever he's doing, right? Maybe to get some food. And what does he see? Well, we know what he sees. He's going to see an entire army surrounding his home. V'hinei chayil sovev et ha'ir v'sus v'arechev. Right? He sees everything. He sees so much. He goes back and he says, Vayomer na'aro elav. He comes back into Elisha's home and he says, Aha, Adoni, eicha na'aseh. He goes back to Elisha says, oh my God, we're doomed, sir. What shall we do? We have an entire army with chariots and horses, and we're doomed. They're going to kill you. What does Elisha say? Vayomer al tira. Don't be afraid. Ki rabim asher itanu me'asher otam. Don't be afraid. We have more on our side than they have on their side. I mean, I don't know what he means. I mean, he's only one person plus his mesharet, right? So how can he be saying that? We have more on our side. So obviously, who is he talking about? He's talking about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We have God on our side. Because we have God on our side, they can't defeat us. But the words are chosen. He says, Vayomer al tira. Don't worry. He really cares about his misharet. He cares about his worriness. Don't worry. We're okay. Anachnu beseder. And then what does Elisha do? Vayitpalel Elisha vayomar Adonai fkachna et einav veyir'eh. Vayifkach Adonai et einei hana'ar vayar. והנה ההר מלא סוסים ורכב אש סביבות Elisha. He says, Hashem, open the eyes of my servant, of this Na'ar, this boy. Open his eyes, let him see how powerful we are. Sure enough, Hashem opens the eyes of the Na'ar, of the Mesharet, and he sees Susim. He sees horses and chariots lit up in fire, surrounding Elisha on his side to battle the side of Aram. But what I find so interesting, he doesn't just say to his Na'ar, to this boy, to this Misharet, don't worry, we will conquer Aram, or don't worry, Aram can't defeat us. He wants the Na'ar to see for himself. He really wants to calm him down. He must have been in turmoil. He must have been extremely agitated. He must have been stressed out, thinking that he sees outside of Elisha's home so many horses and chariots of an enemy. It was important for Elisha, again, caring about the individual. It was important for him to have his eyes opened so he can see for himself that God is with us, and he calms down. Now, my question is, why do we need chariots and horses lit up on fire? That's what it says. Susim verechev esh sevivot Elisha. Why not just have, just men, army men, right? Just surrounding so that the other army, the enemy army, the Aramim, Syrians, will see what Elisha has, and therefore they'll leave instead of striking a battle. So something so interesting happens. Something that we wouldn't think this will be the solution. The solution I would assume after I just read these psukim is one of two. Either the Aram army sees that they're the minority, or sees that it's going to be a true fight. It's not just going to be capturing Elisha, and therefore they just turn around and go back to their king. Right? That's one possibility. Or the other possibility that I would assume is that there's going to be a war, a battle, and that we're going to win. That's the only thing I could fathom. But that's not what happens in our story. Something totally, totally different. 100% the other way around happens. What happens? Pasuk Yud Chet. וירדו אליו, ויתפלל אלישע אל אדוני, ויאמר, הך נא את הגוי הזה בסנוורים, ויקם בסנוורים כדבר אלישע. What happens? Elisha prays, and he says, Hashem, what I want you to do is that when the Syrians try to attack, or right before they attack, what I want you to do, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is strike these men blind. Meaning, these chariots that are lit up on fire, make their eyes be blind. So weird. And Hashem answers Elisha's prayers, and vayakem basanverim, they become blind. They can't see anything, just like Elisha said. Now, that's very weird. I'll tell you a little story that I remember when I was in the army. In the army, I was in infantry, kravi, as we say, in Givati, and we did a lot of navigation in the deserts. They were teaching us navigations at nighttime, and many times when you're at nighttime, when you're walking on mountains and everything, and you see a car, even in the desert, there's cars, the Bedouins, they have cars and everything. We were always trained, don't ever look directly into the light. Because if you look directly into the light, even if you do it just for a couple of seconds, once you look away from the light that goes right into your eyes, it'll take you a while for your eyes to readjust and be able to see again in the dark properly. Right? If you ever did that, if you ever did an experiment, if you look straight into light, and then you look away from the light, you try to focus, it's hard because you still see the light in your eyes, right? So what happened here, in my opinion, either it was a great miracle that they really just all turned blind, or the possibility is, and that's how I explain why there were horses and chariots that were lit up in fire, is that all of a sudden the Aramim, the Syrians, saw these chariots and these horses full of fire blazing, and they just lost their ability to focus. You couldn't see properly. Okay, but why would Elisha want this to happen? Because this is coming from Elisha. Elisha asked Hashem, God, make sure that they're blind, they can't see. What does he do? This is amazing. What does he do? Pasuk Yud Tet. Vayomer Eleihem Elisha. Lo zo haderech velo zo ha'ir. Lechu acharai ve'olicha etchem el ha'ish asher tevakshun. Elisha then says, goes out to them and says, you know, you guys, you're in the wrong place, the wrong roads. This is not the town you're looking for. I hear you're looking for the man of God. You're looking for Elisha. Well, you got to the wrong place. You obviously can't see properly. You're in the wrong area. Follow me, and I will lead you to the man that you are after, to Elisha. And sure enough, Vayolech otam shomrona. What does Elisha do? He leads them to the Shomron, the heart of Mamlechet Yisrael. Who lives in the Shomron? The king of Israel. What does the king of Israel have in the Shomron? He has the imperial guard. He has his warriors. He has his army. Basically, what Elisha did is he led this army, the Aram army that tried to capture Elisha all the way up north. He leads them to the heart of the kingdom of Israel to be captured by the king of Israel. Pretty cool. Meaning not even one man had to shed blood. Not one warrior, not one soldier had to die. It wasn't about a battle. Elisha could have had battle with them, and he would have won. He had these chariots and these horses lit up on fire, but they weren't there to battle Aram. They were there as a distraction, to distract the Aram army so they become blind, and then he goes out and says, you're in the wrong place, and he leads them to the heart of the Shomron. Now, why would he do that? Why not just have a battle with them? Why not defeat them? And the answer is because, again, that's not Elisha Hanavi's job. Elisha Hanavi is not to take care of Melachim Yisrael. Had he gone into battle, had he defeated the Aram army, then the Armenians around Syria and other nations would assume that Mamlechet Yisrael is very, very strong, when that's not the purpose of Elisha's nevuah. That does the exact opposite. Elisha cannot have a situation where Israel is perceived as strong, because we know that very, very soon they will be attacked and they will die, as the nevuah from Eliyahu was given. So instead, he devises a plan where not one person has to shed blood. Pretty amazing, pretty cool story. Story's not over yet. Let's continue. Pasuk Kaf. Vayehi kevoam Shomron. When they finally reach the Shomron, Vayomer Elisha Adonai pkach et einei ele veyiru. He says to Hashem, now it's time to have the Aramim regain their sight. Vayiru, they will now see. What are they going to see? They're going to see that they're captives in the middle of the heart of the Shomron. Vayifkach Adonai et eineihem vayiru vehinei betoch Shomron. They're in the middle of the Israeli nation, in the middle of Mamlechet Yisrael, captives, captured by Israel. Now what's going to happen? But they're in the area of the king of Israel. So what is the king of Israel going to do with all this? Pasuk of Aleph, Vayomer Melech Yisrael el Elisha ki yir'oto otam. The king of Israel says to Elisha when he sees them, Ha'akeh avi. He says, should I strike them down? Should I kill them? What do I do? After he restores their sight, they're probably struck with fright. The Syrian army is struck. They're like totally bewildered, shocked, don't know what to do, surrounded by the Israeli army. And the king now says, what do I do? Do I kill them? Avi, what do I do? Do I kill them? Do I fight them? Do I strike them down? How does Elisha say? Elisha answers, Pasuk Kabet, Vayomer lo take. No, do not. Not even one soldier should die. Why? This is his answer to the Melachim of Yisrael. Ha'asher shavita b'charbecha uvekashtecha ata makeh. He says to him, did you capture these soldiers? Are you the one who went to combat? Did you lead them here? Is this your doing? You have no power here. This is not about you. How dare you think that you can take control? How dare you think that you can take credit for defeating? This is not what you need to do, says Elisha. I did not bring them here so they can be captured. So why did he bring them here? Look at what he answers. He says to him in the middle of Pasuk Kavbet, Sim lechem umayim lifneihem, veyochlu, veyishtu, veyelchu el adoneihem. He says, give them something to eat and drink, and then let them return to their king. Wow, not even battle, nothing. He doesn't want any necessarily bloodshed. Elisha just wants to diffuse the situation, but what he really wants, he wants the king of Israel to start realizing that everything is in the hands of God, not in his own hands. But the king of Israel's first reaction, his gut tells him, I should kill them. But once I do, I will be elevated as the king who defeated Aram. But that's not the intentions. And therefore Elisha says no. Now, why would the king listen to Elisha? Because the king also is afraid of Elisha, not of God. The king is not afraid of God. And we'll see that in the next part of this perek. He's afraid only of Elisha, because Elisha by now has a name of a pure miracle worker. What he did to Naaman, what he did to the Isha Shunamit, and what he did right here. Single-handedly, one man was able to not defeat, but to plot a plan to bring in an army to its feet. One man. The king of Israel is terrified. So therefore, the king of Israel asks Elisha, what should I do? Should I kill them? Is this for me? Is this done all for me? I mean, did you do all this so that I can be considered a great king? I mean, is this all about me? And Elisha says, no, you didn't do anything here. This is not up to you. It's all about God. Therefore, now one soldier should die today. Instead, you will feed them. You will give them food. You will give them drink. And once they're full of food, then you will send them back to Aram. That is what Elisha is doing here. Pasuk Kaf Gimel, Vayichre lahem keira gedola, vayochlu, vayishtu, vayishalchem, vayelchu el adoneihem. That's what happens. The king of Israel, does provide them with a feast, and after that they eat and they drink, and then he sends them back to the king of Syria, of Aram. Velo yasfu od gidudei Aram lavo be'eretz Yisrael. And from then on, they stopped raiding the land of Israel. The small little battles stopped. Now this pasuk, Velo yasfu od gidudei Aram lavo be'eretz Yisrael, we're going to see that the next pasuk, pasuk Kaf Dalid, opens up with another desire for war. So what does it mean that they stopped? So the Parshanim basically said they stopped this type of warfare, of this milchemet hatasha. From now on, it's not going to be these small troops or small armies trying to conquer and ambush Am Yisrael, Mamlechet Yisrael. Instead, it's going to be an army versus an army. which basically is what Hashem really wants, because that is the nevuah. It will fulfill itself when there's a great war, and the great war will be seen by everybody, and we'll see how Israel will be defeated. Hence, Elisha understands that he cannot do anything to jeopardize the nevuah. Even though the Bnei HaNevi'im that we saw in the beginning of the perek were trying to do everything they can to heal from within, to possibly create a community, like I said before, a Gar'in Torani, a community that might affect and influence Am Yisrael. But the king is gone. All the king cares about is his own credits, his own ability to regain power. And that's why this first inclination was, should I kill them and get the get the credit for becoming the king who defeated them? And Elisha says, no, it's not. This is not your job. In fact, you're going to feed them and send them off. And what the world will see is possibly two things. Either you're so powerful that that you didn't even need to battle them, or that you listen to the Navi, to Elisha. That is the source of your power, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we're leaving this, the middle of the perek is kind of giving the king of Israel a bechira, a choice to make. From now on out, are you going to be the king that follows Elisha, meaning follows HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or not? So the next part of this perek, is from Kaf Daled, is another small story that will kind of seal the deal a little bit and show us really what's going on in Mamlechet Yisrael. And we're going to see, Israel is at a junction. Mamlechet Yisrael now is at a junction. What is going to happen the next time there is a possibility of war? Will they then pray to God? Will they be chozer b'tshuva, go to Elisha and do it the right way? Or will they do it again the wrong way, which will lead them back to the nevuah of Eliyahu Hanavi? So that, be'ezrat Hashem, we will see next week. Shavua Tov.